Hi there, I'm Nick and welcome to the UX Psychology channel. I wanted to start a channel, a group, a way of practicing UX that was different to everything else. You've probably seen me being quite active on LinkedIn. It's been really difficult for me for probably the past 10 years practicing UX as a user-centric, psychology-driven individual and coming up against arguments against the basics of research. Having to argue and negotiate to achieve what methods that we know work, that we know drive results. So that's been my struggle, and I just can't keep quiet anymore. We kind of lost UX to design. The UX UI group kind of just kidnapped it, and it's not coming back. So we just have to wave that one goodbye and make sure that research, good scientific psychological research, is the way that we do user-centric UX moving forwards. So I've got a presentation I want to show you now. I've put this together because A, it saves me having to remember my lines or have cue cards, and B, it's a nice visual for you because I'm not that good to look at for 10 minutes. Or maybe 5, we'll see. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Let's get into the presentation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about UX psychology, what it is. But first of all, an introduction to the problem. So on one hand, you've got plumbers, and on the other hand, you've got carpenters. Both tradesmen, practitioners with different skills, different tools, different methods, different subject matter. So all they have in common, they are tradesmen, they are practitioners. Now in this analogy, let's pretend that UX are the plumbers. And let's pretend that everybody else are the carpenters. Now imagine plumbing is super duper popular all of a sudden. And day rates are skyrocketing, and plumbers are really rare. It's hard to find a plumber. And all of a sudden, everybody really wants to be a plumber. But the carpenters are having a look, and they're thinking, hang on, I'm only $250 a day. You're only $500 a day. Why don't I just be a plumber? And so what happened was that loads and loads of carpenters put down their tools and said, I'm going to be a plumber. Now, some of them kept their old tools. They brought with them their hammers and their rulers and all their wood devices. And they went into plumbing. And they started to tell plumbers in great big numbers that plumbing was all about wood and saws and doors and making stuff. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. Now, the problem was that there are so many carpenters all saying this that actually the definition of plumbing became completely changed. So plumbing, in this analogy, now includes T-squares and hammers and nails and saws. And it's completely ridiculous. And this is exactly what happened in UX. Everybody wanted to become a UX person. And fair enough, we needed more people. But all the people that came in didn't listen to the way it was being done already. They decided to interpret it the way that they wanted to. And that meant that with a very fluffy definition of UX, everyone was defining it differently. And UX today is very much a design discipline. So, UX psychology is here to distinguish ourselves from everybody else. So let's talk about what is UX psychology. Now, first of all, a quick definition. The application of psychology, knowledge and methods to user experience. That's it. It's not rocket science. We have a very established area of knowledge, of expertise called psychology over decades and decades and decades, centuries. Why are we ignoring it? So, this is not about design versus science, and if you have seen me talk at UX Bournemouth or UX Live or one of the crunches, you will have seen me show these slides probably. This is not another fight. I don't want to get into more fights with designers. If you guys want to do things your way, go do it. That's fine. I don't want to argue with anybody anymore. If you're going to go that way, we're going to go that way. And really, that's where it's come down to. There's no more fighting. But really, what I want to happen and what needs to happen is design and science getting together into bed. A happy, productive relationship. So when design and science interact well, when you're looking at discovering what is, and you're interacting with inventing what should be, the magic happens. That's when special beautiful, amazing experiences are created. So once you add those two, you have killer UX. And I mean, trust me on this, it works. Ask anybody I've worked with or for or any of the brands. Ask them. We've increased conversion. We've changed behavior through messaging. We've done some really cool things using science and design in perfect harmony. The problem is, in the UX market today, science is a rare commodity. There's loads of design, there's loads of art, there's not a lot of science. So why am I doing this? Why am I sticking my head above the parapet? Why am I targeting myself? Why am I getting into all these fights? Well, first of all, to help marry UX and psychology together. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Then we need to prepare for UX designers' personalization needs. They're going to have lots of questions. And we're coming on to that later too. And finally, to improve the quality of user research by bringing in more science. And again, this is all to come. So first of all, let's talk about marrying UX and psychology together. The basic definition of psychology is it's the study of human behavior, or the scientific study of human behavior. UX is the practice, the application of achieving optimal interaction between human and computer. It's almost the I can never say that. Operationalization of HCI, of human-computer interaction. Sorry, my computer's going into sleepy mode. So UX is the practice of achieving optimal interaction between human and computer. So if you've got psychology being the study of human behavior, and UX being the practice of achieving optimal interaction between human and computer, why are these two not married? Why is there not a strong relationship of UX and psychology? Why aren't psychologists better represented in the UX world today? And that's why I'm being more vocal, because I know there are lots more people like me out there who are being outnumbered by the entire marketplace. But we know we've got value. We know that we've spent years in UX labs, in observation lounges, and understanding behavior or understanding how to study behavior is an absolutely essential trait for user researchers. But yet psychologists are very much overlooked, and I want to bring that, I want to change that. I want to bring psychology right to the forefront. So in addition to decades of knowledge, psychology has also got social science research methods from which we use to generate valid insights. Valid insights. Valid means money, means performance, means real. It means it works. And using these methods gets you the transformation, gets you the money, gets you on plan, gets you the conversion. It gets you all the things that you want. Now, we need to get into personalization, because UX designers are going to have, in the next 5 or 10 years, some very difficult questions. Let's start off by stating the obvious. The universal one-size-fits-all user experience is going to die. It's already dying, it's just taking some time to do so, and that's not a great big surprise. One size does not fit all. If you design for the average user, you are designing a sub-optimal experience. Why? I'm not average. You're not average. Individually, nobody is average. So answer me this. Why are we still designing for averages? It doesn't make any sense. Average is bad. But personalization moves us towards an individual experience, a tailored experience that's relevant to you, wherever you are, in whatever context it is, or however you're feeling. So if we compare a brief comparison between an averaged experience and a personalized experience, personalized, it's tailored, it's personally relevant, it's directly informed by the Internet of Things, it's way easier to optimize, and it's segment-based. Unlike averaged, which is universal experience, one-size-fits-all type stuff. It's broadly relevant at best. It's not relevant. The IoT, the Internet of Things, is not relevant to everybody. It's much, much harder to optimize, and you're designing for the lowest common denominator. We can do better than that. A lot better. But effective personalization relies on valid insight about your users. You have to know things about your people in great detail, and that's reliable, that's valid, that you can make money from, convert, change attitudes, behaviors. If you have valid insights, that's all in play. If you don't have valid insights, forget it. You're going to throw a lot of money and time and effort out of the window. So user researchers like me, like you, are going to be asked some very, very difficult questions by designers about personalization. The sorts of questions could be, how do I design for different personality traits? You tell me that 25% of our return visits are from introverts, but as a designer, what do you want me to... Oh, thanks Java, cheers. As a designer, what do you want me to do with that? What do I put down on page? What elements do I manipulate? Similarly, how do you design for different cognitive styles, for learning styles, for self-esteem? And there's loads more. These are difficult questions that we as researchers are going to have to find out. We're going to have to work with designers to find out how to design for these differential behaviors. Now, in the old UX world, when it was full service UX, I was the researcher and the designer. So were you probably. We didn't have to talk to anybody else. It was all within us. So if we had to work out a problem or to understand behavior and then design a solution, it was all in one. But moving forwards, with the roles splitting, we're going to have to talk to designers, we're going to have to communicate with them, and most importantly, work with them to understand their methods and our methods, their knowledge, our knowledge, and to work out the valid insights, how to understand how to design for these differential behaviors. And finally, to improve the quality of user research. So let's do a little bit of UX history. Let's get in the TARDIS or our time machine and go back in time. The dark ages of UX, or before it was called UX, some sort of man-machine interface sort of time, was the 1960s to the 80s, or thereabouts, don't hold me to it. Developers built everything. They built the code, they built the front end, they just built everything. And you've seen them. They look absolutely horrific. They are just awful, overcrowded, ridiculous screens of how not to design. So after the dark ages, we come out of it sometime in the 90s, where I'm calling it proto-UX, like proto-humans, the early formative stages of UX. UX hasn't been formed yet, but the elements that are going to combine to produce the compounds that produce UX are being formed. And we have information architects, we have cognitive ergonomists, and we have interface designers. And there are others, man-machine interface people. And that's in around the 90s. But then around 1995-ish, Don Norman, the mighty Don Norman, coins the term user experience. And guess what? UX consultants and UX architects are born. And we enter maybe the silver age of UX. And it lasted about 15 years. It was good times, 10 years. Of the full service user experience practitioner, where we did research and design. But around 2 years ago, maybe 3, that all came to an end, and UX consultants and UX architects actually died. There were just no more roles. It just dried up immediately. And why? Well, 2 things were spawned. On one hand, the user researcher, and on another hand, UX design. But also, the bastard bastard offspring, UX UI. And I make no apologies. I hate UX UI with a passion. It goes against everything we've all worked for. That's a separate rant, and we'll do that in another video. But right now, the UX consultant, the all-in-one practitioner model, was not sustainable. And it fell apart. There weren't enough people in the market that had both skills, and they couldn't learn them fast enough. So roles split. User researchers, UX design, and or UX UI. The question is what happens next? And this is, again, why I'm here today, why I'm putting my head above the parapet, why I'm getting everybody together under a banner of UX psychology. So, let's get rid of design. It's not my bag, not my thing. We're going to focus on user research. So, moving forwards, user research. What's the next step? What's the evolution of user research? Well, it can go one of two ways. It can go scientific research, in terms of social science, or it can go market research. And to be completely honest, I've seen way more market research out there today in March 2018 than I have any scientific research in UX. It's 80 to 90% market research and 10 to 20% scientific research. And I want to change that. I want to try to educate, inform, because market research doesn't perform, and I want to talk about that now. So, let's put it all together. We've talked about how to marry UX and psychology together, how important that is, to prepare for personalization and to improve the quality of UX research. I need to put it all together for you. I've been telling you the chapters of the story. Now it's time for the main event. The case for UX psychology. Now I also might add, UX psychology is not the nattiest of names. It's not the coolest, the trendiest, the hippest. I needed something that said what it does on the tin. I needed a good signpost that spoke to researchers, to anyone that was user-centric, a user-centric designer, a full-service practitioner, a psychologist, a user researcher, anybody who is feeling disillusioned, anybody who is arguing to do the right thing, anybody who wants to do work that performs. So, market research methods are just not sufficient to handle the needs of user research. It just isn't. You don't do drug discovery or anything to do with medicine or pharmacology using market research methods because they're not good enough. You don't do any kind of structural engineering, any kind of architecture with market research. You use science. You don't do any kind of aeronautics or air traffic control on market research. You use science for these things. Why? Because when this insight matters, when there are lives at stake, or when it's important, science is the paradigm you use. And for user research, psychology is our science. Psychology is the science of UX. And as I said earlier in this video, there's a lot of art and design out there, 80 to 90% probably, and again 10, 20% of science. And if we're going to create beautiful experiences together moving forwards, that balance has got to be much better. 60-40, 50-50. I'm not precious about an equal split, but a more fairer split. Science needs a bigger voice. Designers with scientific research input can do incredible things. And that's why this is so important. So in order to find out the answers to these difficult questions, we need better research methods. And UX psychology exists to bring psychology kicking and screaming into commercial UX. Now, as I said, there's probably a lot of psychologists out there, but we don't know that we're out there. I get some really great feedback on LinkedIn from people. So I know you guys are out there, but we're small in number. So by getting together, by blobbing up, we make ourselves a thing, a force, or a louder voice. And that's what UX psychology is all about. It's not the coolest name, but it's going to work for the time being as a working title to unite the forces, to get a tribe together of user-centric researchers. Now, it doesn't have to be researchers, it can include designers or anybody else. This is an all-inclusive group, except if you're UX UI. Sling your hook, sorry, not welcome here. I'm not kidding either. So, who is UX psychology for? Psychologists who are currently working as UX practitioners, people who want to share techniques and experiences and to get masterclass type content, who want to further improve their expert skill set. Or for psychologists not currently working as UX practitioners and you want to know how to get into it. How do I work as a psychologist in UX? What works, what doesn't work? Personally, I spent at least 5-10 years, and I'm still doing it, adapting my psychology and science for a commercial UX world. And you don't need to make the mistakes that I have and to have the arguments that I've had, I can help you find a reasonable middle ground, a practical ground within which to establish your work, your methods. Also, for user researchers who want to learn how to be better researchers, so learn methods, techniques, tutorials, how-tos. If you're a UX designer, you are more than welcome. It's only the UX UI guys I'm being rude to. Learn how to work with user researchers more effectively. Learn about science. Learn what's important to us and what we need to do to be good. To learn which on-page elements and factors you can manipulate. And an introduction to science and user centricity. And frankly, I'm not saying that all designers are not science literate, but if you're not science literate, jump on board. It's going to be good for you. It's not a bad thing to understand science. And finally, and definitely by no means least, the heads of digital. In my experience, heads of digital have got an awful lot on their plate, and it's a very, very fast-moving environment. And they are often really badly advised by a number of different third parties, naming no names. So it's difficult to build a team that transforms. It's difficult to recruit. It's difficult to know what traits you need. So heads of digital are more than welcome. Understand, how do you recruit a user-centric user researcher? How do you actually put the customer at the heart of the business? And ultimately, by doing that, how do you transform your business? And really, on my hippy-dippy note at the end, it's for anybody who genuinely wants to make the world a better place. Science and design together is exactly how we provide a better place, a less frustrating, easier, more cost-effective, more time-efficient place. Or maybe it's just more beautiful, more enjoyable. It's all there for us, but it's not going to happen if designers are pretending to do UX and psychologists are hiding or are becoming extinct. It's not going to happen. So we need to get together, be one voice, and talk about this stuff. Grow our numbers, share our knowledge, and build up the science. So, things I'd love you to do to help out are like this video, wherever that button is. Subscribe to it too. Now, please contribute to this channel. This channel is not about me. This is not a platform for Nick Fine. This is a platform for us. I'm merely the instigator. I'm merely the one who is sticking his head above the parapet. I'll be the lightning rod. I'll take any hits if there are any to be had. But otherwise, this is for you. This is for me. This is for all of us to talk about. So get in touch with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or any which way you can. We can do interviews over Hangouts and broadcast them live on YouTube. We can record stuff. There's loads we can do. You can send me videos. You can upload to the channel directly. Like I said, I'm just the facilitator. Please join the LinkedIn group that I'm about to set up. And also, please, please, please share this video widely. We have to spread the word. So thank you very much for your time. I think that's probably a little bit more than 10 minutes. I fluffed my lines a little bit, but I think this one is the one to keep. So thanks a lot. Like, subscribe, share, contribute, get involved. Thanks a lot for your time, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.